Welcome to Sunday Reflections. This is a day that you're going to find so much different than the others. We're going to be talking about how God can be with you and be there right when we're here in St. Augustine and throughout St. Johns County, where you'll find out where there's this history that you'll never forget. So I'm here right now with Erwin Brunson. And Erwin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That's right. And I know you brought a friend with you, too, that you've met her, and we'll find out why she's here to be talking with us. And so, Karen, I'm going to talk about you, too, and you'll know this as well because Karen Walsh is the other person here. And she has always been doing, if you go to the Catholic Church downtown, you'll hear her when she reads all of the different things. So there it goes at every time. So anyway, we're here today, and as we always do, we also want to first of all thank all those people that are supporting us, Erwin, everyone that's here. So we have them here doing this. And so what we're looking for today is the two, always the best. The Shee family is the one that we've known, and we thank them again because they extend our heartfelt thanks to them and to their Shee family because, as you know, they are one of the most generous and community-focused families in St. Johns County. And through their work at the Tringali Barn, it's a premier event that, they have wedding views and they have all kinds of items there, premier events and all of this, even for nonprofits and everything else. And the leadership is by Chris Shee, and the family continues to support and also uplift countless local causes. And that's very important to understand. It's all about this community that we're here for. Their commitment is giving back. And that makes a lasting impact. And we are truly grateful, as we've said before, that we're glad that they are here in our community. And we thank you, the Shee family, and we ask you to always be the ones that make St. Johns County's area much stronger. And then we've got the DJ Clam Shack. And, if you haven't been there yet, to have that best lobster and all of those things there and the things that come all the way from it, it's right in the heart of downtown St. Augustine. And you can come to that. It's on 21 Hippolytus Street. If you get off of the water and you can walk all the way down on Hippolytus Street, you'll get right there and you'll see DJ's Clam Shack, and you'll see that they are where Northeast meets Key West. And that's kind of funny, but they was born in the Keys and rooted in New England tradition. And DJ serves up, the lobster rolls, the conch fritters, the fried clams, everything more is always fresh, and it's with the highest quality ingredients that you'll ever see. And they're open Tuesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., and it's the perfect spot to grab and bite that food and stroll the old streets of St. Augustine and taste one of the best seafood experiences in the country. So thank you very much again, Erwin, for being here. When I first, I didn't realize that I had met you at another time with Accord a long time ago when they were doing their thing, and I remember listening to you when you were speaking there. And I understood that, but then I didn't remember that until I saw you just a couple weeks ago, and I saw you when this one man who was 15 years old was there to be there, and we were listening to what he was saying about why he found this one letter.
Robert Stafford.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and then we had Gwen Duncan as well too. So so we just sat around a table talking about it.
And that was a delightful visit. He was 15, and he was on a tour with a high school group. And he arrived in St. Augustine the same night Andrew Young was attempting to cross the slave market. And he didn't quite understand the civil rights movement at all. He wrote a letter to his mom and dad explaining what he had witnessed. And a few days later, the tour took him through Washington, D.C.
Well, he went to South Carolina, then he went to
Yes,
Virginia, then he went to Washington D.C. But I thought there was something very interesting about it.
What was interesting was while in Washington D.C., there was in the Senate, and he saw the Senate filibustering and debating the Civil Rights Act, and he said that day was the day he decided to become an attorney.
He did.
And oftentimes
he's in Oregon. He's from Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's something in your life that just clicks, and you say, "Okay, this is what I want to do." And that was a moment in his life. And he came and spoke. He's a very delightful man. I enjoy being with him.
Well, I'm going to be talking a little bit about you and what you've been doing. And I'm going to ask you about your book writing and your paintings and everything else and what you've done. But I want to at least talk a little bit with Karen here just for a second.
Sure.
To be able to let them know at the public here that why she's here with you. So there we go. So Karen, you know, this is another day that I got a chance to meet you, and although you lived in the same community that I did, but we never saw each other.
That's right.
So so that was interesting and as well, and I was grateful that when I saw you, that I thought I might have recognized you, but I guess we didn't, and because I lived across from where your condo was on a place, a house right on the St. John's River area.
Right.
Well, actually, the Intercoastal, not the St. John's River, the Intercoastal.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, but I know you've met Erwin at some place that we'll talk about later, but it's called a large cross here in St. Augustine.
Yes, the great cross on the grounds of the shrine of Our Lady at the old mission.
That's
the
right.
old mission of St. Augustine, yes.
Well, we're going to get back to that and figure out how you happen to meet him and how that worked out and where it goes and stuff. So, but Erwin, I want you to know this. I've been looking through everything you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gone to one of the schools here that was before segregated, and now it became integrated. And it was a young school for younger kids, and it was on Fullerwood.
Yes. Me, my brother Billy, sister Debbie, and neighbors Michael and Gary were the first African Americans to integrate a public school here in St. Augustine. It was on August 28th, 1963. And if that name rings a bell, the date was the same day Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And I was 9 years old at the time. And so being at Fullerwood, the first day, three things happened that never happened before in my life. One was being called the N-word. The second was being given a finger. And the third was spitballs hitting me all day long. And so when I went home that afternoon, I was disillusioned about the school, Rick. I didn't really think I was going to enjoy it. I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it. And I'm turning on the television and watching Leave It to Beaver because I know there's not an episode that would show what I went through that day. But the news was on, and they were showing, re-airing Dr. King's message on I Have a Dream. And it got to the part at the end when he said that one day little black boys and little black girls will walk hand in hand with little white boys and little white girls and be judged by their character and not the color of their skin. Based on my first day, I was very skeptical. So I knew I had to understand this thing called civil rights. And that's when my attention focused toward reading the paper, watching the news, and listening. My parents were deaf, so most of everything we had to learn was through observation. And during that time, it was a learning curve. And once I understood what civil rights meant, then I realized that, okay, I have potential. And, the limitations placed on that potential.
So at 9 years old, and you might get a little bit closer to the
Okay.
there. That will make it easier for them to hear you a little bit because you're also very soft spoken, and that's okay because that's what we should do. And me, I'm just
nature.
Well, and I'm just one of those lawyers that talk so loud. So there you go. So that's it. But I'm not doing as much as I did before. But so anyway, so I knew that as you got there, and now it changes your life.
Yes, it did. It was like standing beside the elephant in the room and not knowing how big that elephant is until you step back each year, each year. And I realized back in early 2000 how big the moment was when I met Dr. Haley. And that's
Dr. Robert Halen.
Robert Halen. He's the founder of the Accord Civil Rights Museum. He was also a dentist and a civil rights activist, my mentor, friend, and I think about him often.
Did you ever go to dentist with him at all? Did you?
In the second grade, he would bring his van to. When I was in second grade, he would bring his van to the school,
Right.
and students would line up, and he would inspect your teeth.
Right.
And if you had needed a cavity, he would give you a card, and that card you would take home, have your parents sign it, so the next day he would fill your teeth.
Wow.
And it's an interesting story. I joined the service in '78, and I was having a dental inspection. And the dentist was really impressed on how those
They were fixed.
Wow, who did this? And I said, back when I was a kid, And so Dr. Helen, at the time, I didn't know him as a kid growing up. I heard his name quite a bit. But we became friends in 2013 when he was presented the Order of Florito Award, which has only been awarded to 7 individuals in this 400-year history of St. Augustine, and him being the first African-American.
Well, and then Greg White got that too.
Yeah, Greg White. That's
right.
Yep. And so this is 2013.
Right. No, I know. Early.
Yeah. And so that couple of days, I got a chance to really talk to Dr. Hill, and he actually filled in the blanks of the book I was writing. And when I returned to Tallahassee, I realized that the book isn't about my frustration with the system of putting me in an environment which caused me to witness my father's car bombing, my neighbor's house bombing. And the story was much more than that. I was something smaller of a bigger movement. I started learning of Dr. Hurling, Hendry and Catherine Twine, of Mrs. Fullwood and other activists who were involved in the civil rights movement and the youth council.
Is that the road in there as well?
Yes.
Off of her?
Yeah. And I was very fortunate to accept the award for her last week from the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Oh, wow.
Along with Catherine Twine.
Wow.
And Catherine Twine is a very interesting story. Her and her husband once lived at 169th Gulf Street.
Right.
Back in the early 50s.
Right.
When they moved into Lincolnville,
right,
my family moved into the house.
Wow, wow.
And so when I'm, all these things, I think is God's way of telling me that he has a mission for me. I have a journey, and God has placed me on that journey. And it started in August 20th, 1963.
So when did you start writing books, and when did you start painting, and when did that all happen in your life?
I've started painting since grade school. I mean, Fuller was where I developed my talent. From the alienation and isolation from the students, all I could do was sit in the back and doodle. And I found I was very good at it. And it gave me comfort. And I realized art was my comfort zone. Then the class bell rings and reality focused back in. The next confrontation.
Did you ever hear of Howard Thurman?
Oh, no, I have not.
Okay, I want you to know him because this is so big. Howard Thurman was in Daytona Beach, and he was able. He couldn't go to high school because they wouldn't let blacks in high school in Daytona Beach. So he ended up coming here to Jacksonville, but with work at his uncle's. I think of an uncle, but it was certainly a relative, regardless uncle or not. And he later went and became the valedictorian of his college. And he later started up all the churches with people from all colors. He did that in San Francisco.
What year is this?
Howard Thurman. He is actually a fellow who met with Gandhi. Mm-hmm. Gandhi wanted to meet him, and I'll tell you more of that story after we finish here. But Howard Thurman, they now have it there. It's now on all of the places. It's
Howard Thurman.
Howard Thurman. Yeah, and somebody.
Research that.
Yeah, no, he's
I'm
amazing.
Always inspired.
I'll tell you why. He later went to Boston. Okay, and then when he's at Boston, there's this one fellow there who was getting his doctorate degree. His name was Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther King carried with him through all of his time Jesus in his name he talks about that it talks about that whole book that he carried, that Martin Luther King carried with him. So I want you to see that later, but we're not talking about that today, but I wanted to share that because just like you said what you did, he had a tree in his neighborhood, in his house, in the outside of his house. He would go and speak to the tree every day to be able to get over it. And the thing that was the most important to me is in his book, that what he found out was he had to have his 2 children to go and see where he used to live.
Well, I did not have a tree.
That's right.
But I did have a watermill.
There you go.
On the corner of Williams and San Marcos by the old jail, there's a watermill.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
And when I was a kid, it did not have an electric pump.
Right.
So it was operating by the force of the water. And days it was not spinning, I would stop and give it a good spin. Because good. That would enlighten my day. I'm on a good track.
There you go.
And I remember one night, we was coming from the carnival, and it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock late at night. And my father turned in, and the mill wasn't turning. And we pulled up in front of the house. I waited for everybody to go inside the house. And I ran down and gave that mill one good spin.
That's great.
Because I knew I couldn't probably sleep if it wasn't spinning. But those are things that, like faith.
That's
something
right.
You believe that's unseen. And having faith is the key to that journey. It's the fuel that motivates us. And I've always had faith, and that faith was developed when I was sitting full of it. I knew things would get better than they couldn't get any worse. When you hit the bottom, one way up.
Well, tell us a little bit about what happened during that civil rights period that you were involved with.
Well, I didn't basically was involved in the marching or the demonstrations. I was on the north side of town on Galt Street.
Right.
But we did experience a lot of violence. And I hear the stories of those who marched in St. Augustine. I'm learning that more and more every day while I'm at a CORE Civil Rights Museum. I volunteer my time there, and it's a fantastic place to learn of people's experiences. And that's what I learned.
That's right on Bridge Street.
Bridge Street, and that's what I learned of Hendry and Catherine Twine. I learned of Mrs. Fullwood, and I've learned of the Gordons, how he formed his dentistry, and also the foot soldiers and the marchers.
The one that's right in the center by the slaves, right?
Right. And so having an opportunity to understand their stories, putting out everything into a perspective. Well, things I witnessed as a child, I did not understand. I can now understand. But more importantly than that, I see the spirit and the determination of a people, and the movement and how it transformed people. We did not throw stones. We did not throw bottles or set fires. We did it in a peaceful, spiritual way. And that way brought about other people to come involved. Rabbis, Jewish rabbis came and got involved. Protestants, people from all denominations. And to see that unity working toward civil rights, which basically demanded accommodations. It meant eliminating Jim Crow. It means opening the door. And when I saw that movement as a kid, I did not quite understand it. But years later, I began to understand the resolve of it. And the resolve was the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. If it had not have been for incidents in St. Augustine.
That allows for voting.
Well, when people saw what was happening with the Munson incident, I think it changed the culture in Congress to say we got to put an end to this. Because we can't go around being uncivilized and people doing this. And so I understand the first part of the act was the accommodation part.
Well, do you remember that Lyndon Johnson came here to St. Augustine as vice president?
He came in the spring of '63.
Right.
And he came to dedicate a building, I think, on St. George Street or something. And
yeah, he was there. You could see his picture up there.
Yeah, he was there, right.
Yeah.
And I think the next night they was having a banquet at the Ponce de Leon Hotel.
Right.
And a delegation wanted to attend that formed by Dr. Haley. He complained that there was no blacks on the Quacentennial Commission or Advisory Board, and they should at least be able to attend this banquet with President Johnson. And, President Johnson aides took wind of it because Dr. Haley and others was going to protest.
That's how he ended up getting together with Johnson.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they allowed Dr. Hilling and his delegation to attend the Flagler dinner, and they put him in the back near the corridor. What they did not realize is that when the vice president entered the dining room, he had to pass that corridor. And so when the vice president was passing the corridor, Dr. Hilling stood up and said, "Don't forget about us, Mr. Vice President."
Yeah.
And everybody in the dining room heard, like, "Who's that? Who's that?" And someone said, "Oh, that arrogant dentist." And so that's what he was getting a reputation, because he saw that they needed change.
Right.
And President Johnson saw the atmosphere. He was kind of unstable. He saw a little unrest. And so they kind of stayed away from that.
Yeah.
And just an interesting story how we entered Fullerwood. But that's inside my book, Life in Shades of Blue. And so,
All right. Well, we're going to show that book up here in a second here about the life
Life in Shades of Blue.
Yeah, it's there, and that's what it looks like. That's the one it is. And I know you can get that on Amazon.
Amazon, and also the Accord Civil Rights Museum. And I think there's a copy at Barnes & Noble's and the Lincoln
There you go.
Cultural Center.
It's all there. So,
Yeah.
so I'm going to now move just a little bit here, and we'll come back to the other side. But I want to know, just Karen, exactly how did you happen to meet Erwin?
Well, it was a moment that I reflect on often, because we met at the shrine of Our Lady here in St. Augustine at the old mission. And I was just coming from across the street where I had tried to find a room for a homeless woman that was, was in December, and she had no place to stay. I got her a room for a few nights. And as I walked into the entrance, the main entrance, there's a gentleman standing there, very nice looking, very well dressed, and he is getting his camera all set, take a picture. I said, "Oh, so you're taking a picture of our beautiful cross?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And then he took the picture, and we started a conversation. It was just ignited immediately. And we stood there talking for the longest time. And Erwin is an excellent conversationalist. And of course, I have the Irish gift for gab. And so we started talking for so long. He said, "Why don't we sit down over here?"
Right.
It's this little table and a setting place under the tree there. And we continued that conversation for well over an hour. And he was just such an interesting person, a fascinating man. He talked about his life and the fact that he was an artist. And I was very interested in knowing more about his work. And we just had this great conversation. And then he told me there was a special event at the Lincolnville Museum, which is the old Excelsior School. And he said it was the next night. And why don't I come down there and see what was going on? And there'd be a speaker and maybe a film. And it really was about the people who first came over here, the African slaves and farm workers that got together and lived on the coast of South Carolina, I think it was. And they're called the Geechees. What is it?
Gullah-Geechee.
Okay, Gullah-Geechees. Well, they did a film and showed how they raised, their greatest crop is rice, but they brought their customs and the flavor of their original African communities with them. And it was fascinating to see what they brought with them into this country to enrich that area of the country, because a lot of people don't know about them.
Right.
It was marvelous. So we had a really nice event, and then they had food afterwards. So Erwin and I got to know each other a bit that night, and we started just to get together for coffee and maybe go out for lunch. And I found he's a fascinating speaker. I enjoy hearing about his childhood and his experiences here. And being a northerner from the greater Boston area, I was born in Boston, and I knew very little about the struggles of the Black community in the South. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, Karen has excellent knowledge on theology, and that's what impresses me. So I barred her by giving her information on the civil rights movement.
Right. That's good.
So
Well,
it's a trade-off.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's good. But But I know also you do something here downtown at the Catholic.
Well, I belong to the Cathedral of St. Augustine here, and I'm a lector on Saturday evenings very frequently, almost every week, and I consider it a great blessing, and it's very wonderful experience for me. And I'm learning because I'm reading the Bible to do these,
Sure.
to read as a lector, and it is educating me. And as a Catholic, I knew somewhat, and I discussed what I knew with Erwin, and he was impressed. And I read the Bible, but not probably. I learned a lot about Bible reading from my Protestant friends who were really into the Bible, and that helped me a lot. I have a lot of friends from various denominations, but God is behind everything. It's Jesus Christ is the Lord, and Erwin is a deep believer and a good Christian, and it was just such a pleasure to meet him, and then find out how extremely talented he is. His work is exquisite. I've seen so many pieces; they just leave me saying, "When did you do that piece? What prompted you to do that? What the theme of it? Just beautiful work." So I would like to, see if some more of his shows, but his work is really special. And it's been a great pleasure to have a very nice friendship with Erwin. And we see a lot of each other and have a lot of wonderful conversations. Sometimes he comes down to the cathedral and goes to the mass there with me.
Right.
And he's taught me a few things, which he got from his grandmother.
Yeah.
He speaks
Well,
a
we're
lot
going to
about
talk
her.
about that right now. Let's
Yeah.
talk about your grandmother.
Well, my grandmother was a.
Well, I want you to go into that because of your family and what happens and how you got to that place and where you got to Tallahassee and all of those things.
Well, as I said, my parents were deaf, and there were 6 of us.
Did they ever go to here at the?
Yes, my father worked and attended Florida School for the Deaf and Blind, and my mother attended there and graduated. And they were married in 1952, and 6 kids. And in between kids, my grandmother would take half to live in Bristol while my mother raised the other half and so forth.
Wow.
So I spent quite a bit of time with my grandmother in my youth, 2-year segments. But one thing I found out that she was very God-fearing. And she was very, very straight down the road. There was no gray areas. And she knew there was a lot of hate and anger built up in me when I left St. Augustine in 1968 because of what I experienced. She knew I was very violent, I was very aggressive. So one day she had me read something from the Bible. She said, "Read this." And it said, "God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and those who believe in him will not perish, but have everlasting life." And I thought about that last line, everlasting life. Even if I perish, I will have everlasting life. And then I began to draw more. But my drawings reflected my feelings now, not my frustration or my anger. And so art has always been that comfort zone throughout life. If something's on my mind, I'm despaired or trouble, I will take out a piece of canvas and get my paints and pencils. And the idea that I'm working on a blank piece of canvas that I will soon put designs and colors on it. And when it's finished, I'll look at it and ask myself, did I do that? I was just an instrument of the paints doing that. And life is the same way. We're all instruments. And I use art as that comfort zone to meditate and give thanks to an ability that God has given me to create and to bring beauty.
Well, have you ever seen the Highwaymen art?
Yes.
Well, I knew almost all of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we became friends with all but one who passed away early, but his brother still is doing it.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting into that and going to where they were at, and we became so good. And then the lady, there was only one woman that was in that first part of the Highwaymen.
Yeah. They made annual tours through Tallahassee.
Right, they did.
And I had an opportunity to know 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
And I was talking to him one day, and I was telling him, I like your technique, I like your style, I like everything, And I challenged him to paint a painting. I betted him I could paint one in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he said, I can paint one in 3.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they did. They used to. They do it real
they did
quick.
it in 3 minutes,
Yeah.
and he was right. He did. I was getting the sand down. He was finished.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
looking at me saying, I'm more detailed.
Yeah.
Where they're just
Yeah,
a presentation.
They did, except there were 3 of them that were really, they spent more time on it.
Yeah.
But what happened, as you probably already know, and probably you all know too, if you've been seeing Highwaymen, you'll see it. They're all over.
All over.
Yeah, well.
I know friends that have pictures of the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And, hopefully one day they'll have a brunch in their house.
Yeah, that's right.
But we competed, and some do it in 2-3 minutes. They have the colors. I mean, it's just
Well,
fantastic.
many of them are also involved with God.
Yes,
Mary Ann was
Mary Ann.
she was one that I helped
right.
and became and
She
saved
would
her.
paint on wood, doors, windows,
Just
glass,
amazing.
and she couldn't afford canvas.
That's
but
right.
she loved to paint.
Hardly anybody could
and
do
her
that.
work was displayed in New York.
Yeah.
And she really got her notoriety and her blessings.
There's a whole book about her as well.
She deserved it. And I was fortunate enough to meet Annie Harris in Tallahassee, my companion for 5 years. She passed last July. God rest her soul. But she was a very genuine and interesting woman, and she was a fantastic artist. 30 years with the school system. She was a political ramrod for but at that time, Senator Barack Obama. And she had dinner in the White House with him and stuff. So she was a very fascinating person. But her art was so simplistic. It was so common, but it was just beautiful art. And she learned on her own. And I think that's the best way to learn.
Well, these were mostly all of those people, except for 2 of the artists there of that who learned from a first white man that was that because they could never get into any of the places that would sell art.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So they used to take their cars. They had one guy that would take them and stop at architects and all of those places, lawyers, doctors, dentists, to just sell them out of the back of their truck.
Well, art is universal.
That's it.
Like music, art is universal. And I'm hoping they instill more programs in schools for art.
Right.
To bring out the kids' creativity. Oftentimes, the kids locked into the computer and it becomes systematic. But to get something and create it from up here, it's not like somebody programming you. And so I think the arts are very important in schools. Very important.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. My wife was one that brought in at the time, if you may remember, when they had to have go to one school for that one period of time where they would not be able to take the buses. So they would bus everybody into one school throughout Duval County, throughout all the different counties. And they did it. And when she brought in all the art, and she brought in people that dance, people that sing.
That's right.
They do all kinds of things that they show the art. And they had the people. And now one of the ladies went to Episcopal High School, and she's been head of all of that art there. And she worked under that. And so it was so important to that because you have to know. We're look at these photos that we have here. That's part of the art. That's part of art.
Art is in everything that we observe, buildings, our clothing, and somehow art is inspiring when you can see the pattern, when you can see the metrics of art.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what I encourage people to see the metrics of it. I started off with black and white, studying Charles White. But then one day I picked up a magazine on Peter Max.
Okay.
And he had the colors, the designs, and the illustrations. And I was tuned into Peter Max for so many years. So after Peter Max, I became more of a fine arts painting, so, beaches, scenes, and stuff like that. But now I'm more of a contemporary artist.
Well, it moves. It moves. That's
moves
one of the things.
cycles.
Picasso did the same thing.
And you have to expand your horizons because eventually you're going to come back to the same spot that you started.
That's right.
And that's what makes an artist. The fact
right.
that you take chances, you're adventurous, and you're not afraid to do something.
Yeah.
I've kept paintings for 2 or 3 years that I've never finished that I do not want to throw away. A couple of years later, I pick it up. I say, "Oh, this is what it needs." This is what I need to do.
An artist can never finish a painting.
There you go.
There is no question that they
That's
have.
right.
They always have something yet to do.
My problem is knowing when to stop. Right?
That's right. But it is. It's that way. The artist
Yeah.
cannot stop it. And that's true with an author. That's true with everything. That's another part of art is that.
Well, writing was a different experience altogether. Like I said, when I met Dr. Haley, it changed the complexity of the story I was writing. And so now I could put it at more of a historical basis. And so I chose Life in Shades of Blue because blue is my favorite color.
Right.
And the first chapter is baby blue, my childhood.
I think we have some photos
Yeah.
about where you've been on with several people that you've sent to me, and I think it's on
Yeah.
too. So we
Mhm.
can
Yeah,
can
that's-
look at that. That'll help you all that
Yeah,
are out there
clarify,
to
yeah.
do it. So
Now, this is a picture of Dr. Halen at his induction at the 2015 Civil Rights Museum in Tallahassee. He was inducted. And I was fortunate enough to have my brother Billy and my sister Debbie with us. And that picture shows us three as 3 of the 5 who first integrated Fullerwood. And Dr. Haley, one of the founders of the Civil Rights Movement here in St. Augustine. And at that moment, I realized that during the 60s, there was 2 different struggles. How we struggled at Fullerwood and how he was struggling forming the movement. But in the end, 60 years later, we have the same desired end.
all right, and then there's some other photos that we had too that I think might be helpful to the people here listening and watching if they can.
And that's me at the No Kings rally. My political activism has increased the last several decades. And while at these rallies, I always obtain a card that has something written by Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
They have a variety of cards you could choose from, and I always look for one by Dr. King.
All right.
Because Dr. King was one of my great mentors.
All right, and then there's another one that follows.
Oh, yes. This is Miss Lillian Roberson. She was our neighbor.
And how old is she?
She is, I think, 94 years old.
Right.
She was our neighbor in St. Augustine during the 60s. Her house was bombed, and they left in 64. And this is the first day I've seen her since 64. This is it was at the Accord Civil Rights Museum. She came and spent a wonderful day with us, telling us the story. And in the honor, we planted a flower in the memory garden.
Right there next to it, yeah.
Right, that we titled the Gulf Street Defenders.
All right.
And so it was an honor to have that flower planted in her honor and also being with her and talking to her that afternoon. It was really fascinating.
All right, let's go to another photo. I think you're helping people see.
Oh, this is one I love. That's Miss Cora Tyson. She's 102, and she helped us decorate our core Christmas tree. And she is a remarkable woman, God-fearing, and a strong individual, very wise.
I was there for her 100th anniversary as
Well,
well. Yeah.
we're going to celebrate her 103
Yeah,
June 1st.
I know. Well, I've been there.
And I remember when we finished the tree, I said, Miss Tyson, let me give you a lift home. And she almost hit me with the cane. She said, I can walk home. You know, so-
That's right.
Oh,
That's
she's
right.
so much fun. I
Yeah.
love her.
All right. Then there's another one coming. And there's all of them together.
Yeah, now this
there.
is the houses on Galt Street, the Galt Street Defenders. The house at the top left, is our home. The one below it belongs to Eddie Aikens. The one below that was George Smith. And the one to the below the steps represent the house where the Robesons lived, which was bombed. Only thing remains there now are the steps, and there's a monument. And it's a tribute to their activism in the 60s. Her husband was treasurer of the NAACP. Her kids attended Fullerwood. And it was unfortunate that they had to leave in 64, but that's
Right.
tribute.
All right, and so we know this too, that as it related to Dr. Haling, they put fire into his house.
Well, they shot at his house and killed his dog.
Right.
And, he was beaten while attending a Klan's meeting. And Dr. Hailing paid the price, but it did not change his spirituality. He did not back down.
Well, I remember that he had until all of that time of the civil rights, he had many white people that came to his dentist.
Yes, Dr. Hailing had the only desegregated lobby in St. Augustine.
Right, but then they quit.
Well, after the civil rights and the incidents, and
They
things,
didn't
just
go to
stayed
him.
away. And he left in '66 because
He
his business-
lost his whole business.
and so he moved to South Florida and had another successful business.
Right.
And so he didn't give up his dentistry. And when he came back and had the idea of starting Accord,
Yeah.
I remember him calling me in 2014, telling me about the Accord Civil Rights Museum. I said, "Oh, that's a good idea," and everything. So he kept talking about it. So our last conversation dealt with the Accord Civil Rights Museum. He was encouraging me to finish my book.
Well, people can go there.
Mhm.
It's available to
It's
go in.
available, no charge. We have a DVD. We have refreshments, and we'll take you a tour to the
Right.
museum. And I think July 2nd, our anniversary, we're have a new technology we introduced with earphones.
Oh, okay.
You can put on
So you can walk
earphones,
through it
and you
yourself.
can walk through yourself from each room to room and hear a narrative.
Yeah,
of
that's
each room.
good. That's
And
good.
so we're going to implement that on our anniversary, July 2nd.
All
We're
right.
looking forward to that,
All right.
and invite everybody to come.
Well,
July 2nd.
well, I told you I did a poem here,
Oh,
and I didn't know what it was going to take. I didn't know how I could deal with it, but it seems like every time I'm here, I have some poem, and sometimes I wonder why that's happening. And this has probably been the longest poem that you'll ever hear, because I didn't do very much on it, but it took me the longest time to even write it. And so I'm going to tell you about this and see if it makes anything sensible of what you've just been saying.
okay.
And it's called Save Our Rights.
Okay.
Looking back in time, when those who claimed each man born white would always be the ones who could vote in St. Augustine and every state and city. They could also enter their children into a public school where only white students and no students of colors could help so many others. But still no blacks, man or woman, had any chance. Those who had the power were only thinking a white man or woman ate downtown at Woolworth's Place, where it's located in St. Augustine. And even those who drank the public water couldn't drink because they were people of color. Even when they went in the Atlantic Ocean in St. Augustine Beach, and also in the pool, in the Munson Pool, downtown St. Augustine, it was only those who wore a white sheet to hide and cover their mouth and face. These unknown burned the house of the black dentist, Dr. Whaling, Robert Whaling. He lost his white patients and his dental profession in St. Augustine. He had to move to another Florida county and restart his dental practice. A man of ethics, born with his black color. It was when he left was to be together with each other and do what was needed to vote regardless of color. Because of Dr. Whaling's hard work, it was passed by Congress and signed by President Johnson in 1964. In India, years before, there were the Indian people of different color, and the British did anything to maintain their power, until Mahatma Gandhi was willing even when he wouldn't eat. No violence, still kept food away, saving their human rights. But in the USA, those of color were following God whenever he wanted to go with him, knowing then as we know now, a song, we shall overcome. No longer more, no violence at all, just always trusting God. Those of color willing to keep their civil rights, walking together but never fighting. There was one day years later in Washington, D.C. in the summer of 1963. Speech by the preacher, Dr. Martin Luther King. It was when the world heard the words he gave at the Lincoln Memorial. I have a dream. It's because those who wanted to love each other were citizens together, regardless of their color. It was then we know it was peace and love. It's always been God whose love that lasts forever. And now St. Augustine will be known throughout the world, a museum of civil rights history, soon to be within the Black Museum for others to learn the truth, that it's always with our true God that is with us then and now, because God saves our lives with him forever.
That's very beautiful, Rick.
So, well, it was not my reading. It was something God really put to me, and I just took a lot of time.
And I hope this poem encourages citizens of St. Augustine to write your legislators and let them know that we need the Florida History Black Museum here in St. Augustine, not in Eatonville or Ocala, but we need it here because this is the city of history.
Well, they seem like they've already approved that, and that they're now signing documents for it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, they're there.
Good
so
news.
Yeah, no, it's moved forward.
It's moved forward.
Yeah, we are going to be that city for the museum.
We need to be
of
that
Black
city.
history.
St. Augustine is a very mystical place because of its history. Yeah. And the people who made that history.
And with God. You got to understand, look how many churches we have. Look at the Greek churches. Let's go to the Catholic churches. Let's go to the Protestant churches. Let's go to the Presbyterian churches. Let's go to the Episcopal churches. Let's go to the AME. Let's go to all the churches that we have here in this community.
And the Spirit will bring us together. Reading your poem reminded me of one of the last conversations that Dr. Hill and I had in person. And I was asking him what was wrong with today's civil rights movement. This is in 2015. And he took out a piece of paper and he drew a square. In the middle of the square, he put an 80. On the front end, he put a 10. On the back end, he put another 10. And he said this is the state of the civil rights movement because you have 80% of the people on the wagon and 10% pushing and 10% steering. And it's time for those 80% to get off the wagon to start steering and pushing for the next generation. And they get off and they give back. And that's why he respected people like LeBron James, who opened charter school for kids, and Magic Irvin Johnson, who've been doing it for years. Those who've been riding off the accomplishments of the 50s and 60s need to now get off the wagon and give back. Even if you donate to organizations like Accord or the Lincoln Cultural Center or the Boys and Girls Club, those 80% need to get off to make it easier for the next generation. And then we could steer them into the same footprints we achieve. We have civil rights to an extent. Some are trying to water it down. The basic crusade now should be human rights, the rights that everybody should deserve. But Dr. Haley and I spoke about that. And so when I think about the wagon hypothesis, I think about all the people who are helping to make that a reality, as you said in your poem. And that's a blessing. That's a spiritual intervention.
Yeah. Well, and I think that as you're doing, Karen, that now that you've been listening to some of this as well, and you've learned a lot from Erwin as well.
Yes.
And how does that make a difference at where you go and where you're at? Because I also know that we have one that I told you that I'd been at with my ring of Santiago de Compostela. Mm-hmm. And we have that portion of it that's here in the Catholic Church, right here now. So we have that one that's already made there, and you can see what's going on.
Well, I've been to Europe several times, and I have visited. I've been to the Vatican. I've been to Vatican City, and I've visited a lot of the holy, various missions and various places in Europe. But to live here, to me, this is sort of like my mission. You know, it's like I was drawn here. I could have moved a lot of places when I came down from Boston, and I was in Gainesville very briefly. My sister lived there at the time. She's passed now. And I decided I was being called. I said, I don't think I belong here. I want to go to St. Augustine. And people said, well, what do you know? I said, well, I've visited there. I've been to the beaches, but I've been to beaches everywhere. I said, but St. Augustine is very special. I feel something when I'm there. It's like my heart is drawn there. And so I came here and I've never looked back. I don't regret it. I hope this is where I will live until I leave this world. It's a beautiful town. It's got a great history, especially a history of faith, and that's what I love about it. The old mission is now a Catholic shrine to Our Lady, but I still remember it as the old mission of St. Augustine. There was a song written about it way back in the 1950s.
It actually still has the road that ends up to it, the old mission.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right.
And there is, there's a song written about, I'll meet you at the old mission. We'll come together again at the old mission of St. Augustine. It's a beautiful song. And it's a town that in my heart, I just romanticized. That's where I belong. And I wanted to be here. I love the history. And I love the history, too, of the courage of the people who had to come up and say, we have to be heard. We have to be heard. And they made themselves heard. And this is where a lot of the change was initiated. And Erwin was a youngster then, but he's very proud of, the people that he knew and the people that he got to experience at that time. And the stories that I hear from him are just amazing. It makes me feel like I was there at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Enzo Torcoletti has a place there right by the cross that he's put in there as well. And so he's an amazing person himself as an artist as well. And when you see that, and you see somebody that was also a professor of art at Flagler College.
Yeah.
And so now you see art that makes it inside where there is also a cross.
That's right.
And so you can see where all that reflects ourselves as to where we're at and where are we going to be? Where are we going to be? What is our plan? What is our plan today? What is our plan every day? And where does God take us? And that's really what we want to know. And all we have to do is follow him. Just follow him. That's it. Just follow him. He'll take us all over.
Well, the minister once told me when I was a little boy that God already have our life mapped out 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. God knows what we're going to do, where we're going to wind up. And all we have to do is keep the faith. Do not veer off that road. Keep the spirit here and maintain. My grandmother, like I said, she encouraged me to accept Jesus. And I remember one time I hit rock bottom, and I remember what she said about Jesus and how she taught me to believe in Jesus. So I made 4 promises. One is that I would get to know Jesus. 2 is that I would go back to FAMU and finish my degree, Florida Emory University. 3 was devote more attention and affection to my art and to make it grow. And 4th was to write a book. And through the grace of God, I've done all 4. And I have a bucket list of things that I want to continue to do, but they'll come with time. I'm not going to force it. Like I said, this is a journey. As long as I keep the faith, there's no speed limit. Because God's going to take you where you need to be.
When you went to FAMU, did you ever go into the library there?
Oh, my goodness. Yes, I had to do class assignments. And I remember going to the 3rd floor. That was the Black History section of the library. I mean, old Black History.
You see the law books in there, too?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Well, you know.
FAMU once had a law school that they closed.
Well, you know what? While I was at FSU Law School.
Oh, you were at FSU Law School.
And I was there, and as I no longer went to class, I had living in a mobile home, and I mean, it was really a trailer. It was somebody that died in it that my dad got for me. And I would always go over there with the 9 black people that were still becoming lawyers that were in there, and it was me that was in there using their books because they were much better than FSU's books because they didn't have as many stuff then.
That's right, and that's why.
But you know who did that? And the most craziest one guy who's been a who has helped so many others but himself much more. And he was the one who was with Westlaw, and that's how he used to sell the books and do it. Well, his sister became married to the DuPonts, and then he ran the entire DuPont after his sister, he became the one that did it, and his name was Ed Ball.
Okay, yeah, I know.
And so Ed Ball was here in Jacksonville.
He kept Disney World from coming to Wakulla Springs.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right.
And
Well, it was
also-
his place.
And also, my grandmother worked for the DuPonts during the summer.
Right.
And you said you attended FSU Law School. Do you know Daisy Flory?
What's the last name?
Daisy Parker or Daisy Flory. But she taught at FSU for a number of years.
Well, I wouldn't have known that
Yeah.
probably during that time because I was there. Because
during the
I
40s
barely
and
did.
50s and 30s.
Yeah, no.
But yeah,
I was there.
I always look for connections.
Yeah, no, I was there in '67 is when the law school started.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
because-
when the law
yeah.
school started.
Now Florida A&M has a law school in Orlando.
That's right.
It's one of the best in the Southeast, and it's growing. I have friends who graduated, and they have nothing but compliments about the law school.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. But most of the books stayed there,
That's right.
and so on the third floor, I would go there and read the books and
That's
stuff.
right. Beautiful book.
But
Yeah.
the books of the 1900s, the Black history, that really fascinated me. I would spend hours up there going through the Black history and wondering how come this wasn't taught to me in high school.
Yeah.
You know, learning about people like Marcus Garvey, Frederick Douglass, E.D. Du Bois, and
We have several from
Washington.
Jacksonville, by the
Yeah.
way. Just
But yeah, but in my vacuum, that wasn't taught.
right.
And now that I have the opportunity to learn this history, then it was very fascinating because history somehow is rooted in our future.
Yeah.
But first, you have to understand that history, and it's very fascinating.
Yeah. It's a way that we're doing
But
things.
Ed Ball, you mentioned Ed Ball. The reason he didn't want Disney to come there is because of the railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He always did that. Yeah. He owned the railroad. He owned the all the trees.
Yeah.
He owned all the
And
things.
then we have Henry Flagler that came to St. Augustine,
That's right.
and at times
He actually was the one that developed Florida
well, I think he did,
with the railroad.
I give him credit for culturalizing Florida.
That's right. That's
Bringing
right.
out the beauty.
That's right.
You know,
He
and
did.
he did
all the way to the Keys.
Sarasota, for instance.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he
Yeah,
did a
that's
good
right.
job. And so that's why I love St. Augustine because of the history, the beauty. and
Well, we
growing
have
up here.
St. John's County too. That's
Oh, yeah.
the whole thing is there. So
But Florida is the state
Yeah.
to be.
yeah. Well, if you have one last thing to say, I want you to say it because we're about to close up for today.
Okay. I notice every time we speak, Rick, you always recite a poem or sing a poem. And it reminds me of one of my favorite songs by Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's called Sing a Song. And there's a verse that says, if you sing a song today, you will have a better way. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Well, now I can say, when you send a poem my way, I will have a brighter day. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all right, all right. Well, thank you both for being here, and I really enjoyed the time with you today.
Same here, Richard. Been a pleasure.
That's good, and we'll just be saying next time, next year, next month. Actually, will be the next time we're here. Probably right after the 11th or somewhere around that time. We'll be back on, and before that time, just remember, today is a Sunday Reflections. May God be with you.